Don't chew on that, Max.
Cooper loves that chew too.
Oh, now he's into Cooper's food. Wow, he is loving it. What do you feed Cooper?
Blue Buffalo Life Protection Formula. He never leaves a crumb. I love it because it's made with high-quality protein, nutrient-rich fruits and veggies, and wholesome whole grains.
Looks like we're switching to Blue.
Blue Buffalo foods are made with the superior ingredients your dog needs to thrive. Can your dog food say that? Visit feedbluefood.com to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
In a football injury, being paralyzed in a single moment.
There is no limitation. The person who cannot use his arm.
Because I had no feeling below my neck.
Welcome back to the SwagAbility Show, a channel where our desire is to see you thrive wherever life finds you. I don't know if you can imagine this at 20 years old in a football injury, being paralyzed in a single moment. And on top of that, the best that your doctors news the doctors give you is maybe one day you can sell magazine subscriptions in order to have some productivity in life. But instead of that, you return to school, you get 4 degrees landed, you become a prosecutor, going on to be successfully prosecute 50 felony trials, fall in love, and on top of that, have triplets and letters in your drawer from people of history like Nixon, Eisenhower, and the Kennedy family. My next guest, Ken Kunken, and his wife, Anna, have gone on from those early beginnings of what was tragedy one day and turned it into an amazing triumph. And it's my privilege to have them on the SwagAbility Show today. Ken, Anna, thank you for taking time out of your busy weekend to be on the SwagAbility Show with us.
Thank you, and thank you for having us as your guests.
Nice to talk to you.
Thanks, Anna. Can we jump back in? I know the only place people always say, where do you start in a story? I say, well, you always got to start at the beginning. But can we go back to October 30th, 1970? I know your injury was the 31st of 1970, but can you tell me about Ken Kunken on October 30th, one day before that football game in 1970, and introduce us to who he was?
Sure. At that time, I was 20 years old. I had recently started my junior year in college. I was studying industrial engineering at Cornell University, and I was playing on their lightweight football team. And as it turned out, they had a special few days of vacation at that time, because it was shortly before the election. The election in New York and in the United States is always the first Tuesday in November. So this was the end of October. So they had actually had school let out for a week so people could go home and campaign for their candidates. But I stayed up at Cornell because I was playing on the football team. So we were pretty much alone on campus. And a few of my teammates and I decided to get together. We shopped for, a meal to make dinner at a friend's cabin. And on that night, I was attempting to cook dinner on a gas stove. But when the pilot light was lit, the gas that had been building up inside of the stove suddenly exploded. Oh. And there was a bright flash of light and a huge sound. And I was right in front of it. And incredibly, I was not injured. And I just remember lying in bed that night, thinking about how lucky I was. And I remember thinking, as I guess 20-year-olds do, if I can survive an explosion like that without being injured, I can survive anything. Nothing could happen to me. I must be invincible. And the next day I broke my neck playing football.
I, yeah, that's unbelievable. To survive, yeah, survive a propane explosion, and then something as we say is innocent as football, but back then, football up to that point was fairly safe, other than limbs and things like that. But okay, so you broke your neck playing football. Can you explain to my crowd and my friends? I noticed in the book you wrote lightweight football, and that was a term I hadn't heard of at that point. Um, is there a difference in college football?
There are only a few teams in our country that has a lightweight football team.
Okay.
When I was playing, I think we had 7 teams in that. And when I was playing, what you had to do was weigh 154 pounds or less 2 days before the game in order to play in that sport. So there were only 7 teams that had that. We were one of them. So it was unusual, but it was for the smaller athletes to participate in.
Right.
I mean, most of us played on our high school teams when we were in high school with very large athletes we were playing against. So this was an opportunity to play against people that were more our size.
Supposedly to protect, maybe, or give you more of a
Right.
chance to, yeah.
Rather than playing against people who were well over 200 pounds,
Yeah.
we were playing against people who were more our weight.
Yeah. Yeah. I know for me, it's only been 30 years. I can remember almost every detail, sound, temperature of the day, what I was wearing, and all that. Can you take us back to those, the incident that reshaped your rest of your life? And if it's not too painful to tell, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Well, as it turned out, our game was on October 31st, which was Halloween,
Halloween.
which growing up was my favorite day of the year.
Okay.
I mean, what could be better than going out all evening with your friends and getting all the candy and chocolate you could eat, and then spend the next few weeks eating it? So Halloween was always a special time for me. And on this particular day, it happened to be raining, but in football, you play rain or shine. It was a light rain. And on the play I got hurt on a kickoff. Now, I normally wasn't even supposed to be in on that play. But on the first play of the game, one of our players got injured. And as a result, when we did another kickoff later in the game, I was put in to take his place. So I wasn't even supposed to be playing on that play when I was injured. But I ran down the field and I tackled the ball carrier. And as soon as I hit him, I felt like an electric shock shooting through my body, and I lost all movement. And I lay on the field, and nobody seemed to know that I was even hurt at the time. All the players started running off the field, changing from the kickoff team to the, what would be our defense. And even the ref ran up to me, said, "Good tackle, son," and walked over, and I couldn't move. And I didn't even know what a spinal cord injury was about at that time. I didn't know what was happening.
You're panicking?
No, I just didn't know what was happening. I
Right.
thought, I had heard about something called a pinched nerve,
Yeah.
which I still didn't even know what that was. But I thought maybe I had a pinched nerve, and in a few seconds that'll wear off, and I'll get up and run off the field. But as I lay there, I said I can't move, and there actually was 3 doctors at the game. One was the team doctor, one was a doctor who was up in Ithaca, New York, and one was a player's father. And they came out on the field, and I could see from the look in their faces that it was pretty serious. So they called for, they didn't have an ambulance at the game. Usually at football games, they have ambulances, but they didn't. But they brought out a stretcher to carry me at least off the field so the game could continue. And I think the strangest feeling I ever had was when they put me on the stretcher and lifted me up to carry me off the field. It felt like they were just taking my head off the field and leaving my body behind because I had no feeling below my neck.
Yeah.
And it was just an incredibly strange feeling. I felt as if I had been decapitated, and they were just bringing my head off the field.
When Anna was gracious enough and to send me a copy of your audiobook. And as you describe these things to me, it was just like listening to my story that someone already wrote for me. Very similar things. Pinched nerve, first thing that went through my mind. Once they turned me over in the water facing up and there was no danger of drowning, everyone else was freaking out. But to me, I was trying to figure out the new sensation of, like, why does my body feel like there's just one part of me? And when they moved, why are you leaving the other half in the river? It was just the first person that I ever heard describe what I have never been able to put to words. Yeah, it's just been amazing. We'll fast forward a little bit, but I mean, I don't know if doctors' bedside manner has always been the same, but what was it like to have a physician tell you, Ken, at best, there's things out there like selling magazine subscriptions by phone that might be able to give you some productivity or maybe help pay your bills, or that may be what could be a future look like. Because at that point, you're studying at one of the Ivy League schools and place of prestige with great hopes for a career ahead of you. What goes through a young man's mind when he hears magazine sales by phone or, productivity and the best of what your future could look like?
It was incredibly frustrating. First, because right after my injury, it seemed like the medical profession was treating me as if I didn't have a brain in my head.
Yeah.
I mean, here I had injured my neck and not my head. And they were treating me as if I was a small child that they couldn't even talk to or explain things. So they kept me in the dark about what was going on. They really didn't explain what a spinal cord injury was about or what I was going through. And when I was in the rehab facility, which was called the Rusk Institute in New York City, they had actually published a pamphlet that described all aspects of a spinal cord injury. And I needed somebody to turn the pages for me, but they had a page on, what type of movement you would have depending on, where in the neck you were injured. And I'm hurt between the 4th and 5th cervicals. And I looked at that and it described exactly the movement I had. And they had another page that described where my level of sensation would be. And it was exactly on point. And they had a page about how your disability would affect your bodily functions. And once again, it was totally accurate. And then they had a page about what type of future and careers you could go into. And the only thing I saw for being injured at my level was to someday sell magazine subscriptions over the telephone. And I was devastated when I saw that. And I might add that I had, in the rehab facility, 3 roommates, all with spinal cord injuries, and they didn't seem to be doing much with their lives. In fact, many of the people in the rehab facility were not working or doing much with their lives. They were basically sitting home. And it was, I don't fault them. It seemed like the medical professionals were not encouraging them to go out, either go back to school or get a job. And I was fortunate that my family kept encouraging me that there was still a lot they felt I could do. And there was one vocational counselor at the Rusk Institute that helped me get back to school and resumed my studies, and that made a huge difference.
Yeah. Folks, you've got to get the Kenneth Kunken story. I dream of things that never were. Is there more to that? I dream of things that.
I dream of things that never were, the Ken
Yeah.
Kunken story. And if I might just tell your listeners where I came up with that title.
Yeah.
While I was still in the rehab facility, I was asked to testify before a United States Senate Health Subcommittee chaired by Senator Edward Kennedy. And 8 days after my testimony, Senator Kennedy sent me a glass paperweight in the mail that had an inscription on it that the senator said his late brother Robert Kennedy liked very much. And the inscription read, "Some men see things as they are and say why. I dream of things that never were and say why not." And that's where I came up with the title of my book, I Dream of Things That Never Were, the Ken Kunken Story.
Yeah, it's amazing. When I was preparing for this, I mean, because I had 15 hours of your book, I mean, I was paring down to get to a 45-minute podcast, and there was questions I was cutting out, and that was one of them that I was like trying to get, how do you explain the title? So thank you for sharing that with me and for my listeners, because I found that absolutely fascinating. Let's jump ahead a few years, and we're gonna get to here in a few minutes. But Ken, what was the hardest part about returning to Cornell as the first quadriplegic student back on campus? What was that like?
Well, for one, Cornell's on a very hilly terrain. It's in upstate New York, and there was not one ramp or curb cut on the entire campus. I mean, this was about 20 years before the Americans with Disabilities Act took effect, which mandated that these facilities be made more wheelchair accessible. So on my first day of classes, I couldn't even use my electric wheelchair. I needed somebody to wheel me. I had to be either pulled up or bounced down close to 100 steps just to attend my first day. And I remember lying in bed when I got back and looking at the ceiling and thinking I must have been crazy to go back to school. So I'd only been out of the hospital 11 days when I returned to school. And here I was, I felt like I was totally alone. I mean, I was with an attendant that I had met just once before. And I had no plan B. I didn't know what else I was going to do unless I made it work while I was at school. And, you know, I'd go to school and I couldn't take notes. It was incredibly difficult, incredibly frustrating, and very scary just being up there away from my family.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think people know how terrifying it is, especially in a manual chair, when you're at the mercy of whoever's behind you or in front of you. You're just along for the ride. And when you have no control over your body from the shoulders down, it's a terrifying thing. So for you to continue, not just one day, but to go on and earn multiple degrees, your stick-to-itiveness is nothing short of heroic. And I say that because I went back and got 1 degree, and that was enough for me. But your stick-to-itiveness is amazing.
Thank you. Well, you know, I was still just trying to adjust to my new condition. When I went back to school, I'd been in the hospital 9 months and 20 days.
Yeah.
And now I was out just 11 days before I returned to school. But I didn't know what exactly I should be doing. So I decided to return to my prior major, industrial engineering. And this was well before the time of laptop computers. It was really difficult for me to just go through the coursework, let alone try to imagine to work as an engineer. But I was fortunate that I had taken an elective in psychology, and my psychology professor took an interest in me and suggested that I pursue a career in psychology and become a counselor. So after I graduated from engineering, I stayed at Cornell and did a master's degree in counseling and student personnel administration with the thought that I would become a counselor. And then to increase my credentials, I went to Columbia University, coincidentally, the school I was injured playing against, and I earned my second master's degree. This was in psychological counseling and rehabilitation. And I decided to look for a job in the rehabilitation counseling field, and no one would hire me. I looked for a job for a year, sent out more than 200 resumes, and it seemed everyone felt I was just too disabled to work. And when I went to Columbia, the first day that I met with my advisor, he even said that when I graduated, I probably would have difficulty, if not the impossibility, of ever getting a job.
Mm.
And I was just really fortunate to be hired at a facility on Long Island called Abilities Incorporated, which was part of what was then called the Human Resources Center and is now called the Viscardi Center after its founder, Dr. Henry Viscardi Jr., and they hired me to work as a vocational rehabilitation counselor for other individuals who had severe disabilities.
Yeah. You said that people's attitudes were often harder to deal with than your injury itself. What did you mean by that?
Well, I felt like people kept either telling me or suggesting, you just can't do this. If you have a disability, basically just accept it. Don't try and do any more than sitting in your wheelchair and, not go out. I mean, I was not really encouraged to go out in the town because, they didn't have curb cuts. Their facilities were not accessible. Driving anywhere was difficult. I did not have an accessible van at the time. And the thought of ever getting a job in my condition just didn't seem like a possibility at that time. So I was basically treated as if I was an invalid, that my life had no value, and that there's nothing I would be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That one was hard to hear. I remember what the doctors said to my dad as well. The night he asked them what can they expect to see of Steve Wagstaff in the future, and they said the vegetative state you see him now is what your son will deal with the rest of his life. And with that, he walked out of the room and left my father try and deal with the story from there on. But yeah.
Well, the doctors told my father that I probably wouldn't live through the week.
Yeah.
That if I were to survive, my life expectancy would be between 5 and 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I would probably spend the rest of that time in a nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor actually said to my father, if he were my son, I would just let him go.
That was one of those things I think that I don't want to say overwhelmed me most, but really caught my attention was the difference between the medical world that you lived in and the difference of superiority between these doctors and even some of your nurses as well. And then there was the patients, like, let alone you'd forget talking to a doctor if you could talk to them about something, but just the harshness and yeah, it really, I don't know that side of medicine. I mean, I've met my doctors and nurses that have had bad days, but that is not what I saw. And I can't imagine not only dealing with them on top of that, you've got internal strife of what's my new body like. And thank God you had a family that had your back, because without that, I mean, you talked about so much drug involvement you saw around you. I mean, who knows from there? But yeah, it was just wild to hear.
I was fortunate that I did have one nurse who took a special interest in me, She was a special duty nurse for me soon after I was injured, about 5 weeks after I was injured. Her name was Barbara Crook, and she really went out of her way to not only help me, but to convince other people in the hospital that I was actually a good and decent person and that they should treat me more properly. And she helped me a lot. But back when I was injured, I didn't really have any role models that I could look to say, there is something I could still in life, still do. I mean, I was injured about 25 years before Christopher Reeve's unfortunate injury. Now, Christopher Reeve became a tremendous role model, and he did a lot for people with spinal cord injury.
Yeah, I have an autographed picture.
Yeah. I was injured, unfortunately, well before that.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anybody that I could look to say, you can still do some things with your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Resilience, too, isn't just about a career. It's also about love. And Ken, for a long time, you didn't think love or marriage was even in the realm of possibility. And then that changed when Anna entered your life. Anna, you came from Poland to study English and ended up meeting Ken. And in such an unexpected way, here we are talking to the two of you this afternoon. Couple questions from your perspective before you, or maybe you take it back to when you first met Ken. What were first impressions? And secondly, what did how did one step turn into, 40 plus years of marriage and 3 children from your perspective?
So I was looking for something to do on weekends. I wanted to practice my English with somebody. I was living with my aunt who is Polish and her family was Polish in New Jersey. So on weekends, I was talking in Polish. Well, I cannot learn English this way. Um, I was going to school full time, which was actually 5 hours a week, 5 days a week, right? With some other students in my situation, which they English wasn't perfect either, and there is one teacher for the class. So I thought that it's not enough. So I needed somebody to talk to, and I didn't know anybody who would be, let's say, native speaker in America. There's plenty of people walking around in New York City, but remember, before 9/11, those people on the streets in New York City, they were not nice to somebody who outside, okay?
Oh,
Newcomers. That changed after 9/11, by the way.
didn't
It's
know that.
very interesting to see. So I needed somebody to talk to, native speaker. So I found Ken.
How long had you been? I'm sorry to interrupt. How long had you been in the country at this point? You just said you found Ken.
Maybe like 5 months, 4 or
Oh,
5 months.
it was very recent. Okay.
Yes, I just came in November, stayed here for like 3 months. My skills didn't improve, and I really, really, that's why I came here. I left my job back in Poland. I was in marketing, management, responsible position, but these English skills were holding me back to advance. So that's why I left my job and came here for a few months for English, right? And as I said, 3-4 months and still no skills kind of coming to me. So I needed to do something. So that's why I went to school, special school. I changed my visitor visa to student visa, right? And became a student full-time for English. But as I said, I needed practice. So that's why I met Ken. So
Were you at Cornell?
no. In
Okay.
local center here in on Long Island. So I supposed to be his aide, right? I never did that before, but I was willing to learn. But anyway, I came here. I was actually half hour late, right? Right. But that's a completely different story. Anyway, I came to his apartment, which is a spacious apartment, right? I was seated somewhere in the den by his aid. It was very hot in the place, kind of like hot, but that's so. Anyway, I'm just sitting there, and he's driving in with his wheelchair to me. His stretched t-shirt, sweatshirt, sweatpants and stuff like that. I wouldn't say it was a very nice look for him, which I improved later on, thank God. But anyway, so we start talking. I know this is kind of cliche, many people would say, but after a while, you just forget about this wheelchair thing. You see the person, and we just had such a nice, interesting conversation. Um, we had the same interest in movies and things, just I don't know. I just wanted to know this guy. And I remember I was just closing the door to his apartment, leaving. I didn't know I got the job or not, but I was thinking, I know that I have no chance to do the job here because I have no experience whatsoever, right? But I have to find some kind of way to come back to continue our conversation. But thank God Ken has enough, I don't know what.
Can we fill in the blanks a little bit more here?
I knew when she walked in the door, she'd have the job.
So is that what there was the job looking for? What was the job that was being advertised that Anna came to?
I was looking for a weekend attendant. I had somebody helping me during the week with all my personal needs, but I had broken the job into a 5-day-a-week and a 2-day-a-week, somebody on weekends, to give my full-time attendant time off. So I put an ad in the Polish Daily News, which is also published here in America, because I found somebody suggested you get a lot of good applicants from people looking at this newspaper. So I put in an ad, and Anna answered it, and things just really clicked as soon as we saw each other.
I see. I didn't know if there was a setup person in between them. So this was truly an advertisement being answered. And from there, as they say, the rest is history.
A wonderful history.
Wonderful history at that. Which brings me kind of to my next question, because this is at the heart of some of what SwagAbility does. Is we're very passionate about trying to shine the light on caregiver burnout, or trying to improve family caregivers and that situation in many people's lives. But caregiving and marriage are two different roles. How did you both manage the transition and to navigate those roles? And did it become natural to the point where there wasn't a separation between the two? And we can continue on from there after that.
Should I?
Yeah, why don't you take it?
So when you think about it, in our case, the caregiving was part of, you love to give to each other, right? Sure, I'm very tired very often. Okay, sometimes, especially when you have 3 kids, it's impossible to sleep, right? And of course, there is a burnout. But when you are thinking about my role in the marriage kind of thing, when I was talking to my parents about our plans, getting married and things like that, and they were really, afraid that I will get through that burnout, and I will maybe leave Ken for that, because of that, right? The marriage is not going to survive because of that hardship, according to them. But I assure them that, that's the point. We need some privacy as a married couple, right? We need that. With some people coming and going, we might not survive there because there will be no privacy. The privacy in marriage is very important, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that you have a family with kids and, the parents, we just wanted to be just regular neighbor of here, just somebody's working, somebody's keeping eye on the house, we just didn't want anybody kind of intervening. And then from your experience, how actually hard it is to keep this system going with all the aides coming and going. You rely on somebody and they call you, they are not coming. It's better to rely on yourself at this point. It's just easier, really, So we decided just to stick with each other. Ken is, of course, very, very, he helped me, let's say, to leave some time for me working out, because I have to keep myself strong.
Yes.
I'm not young anymore. It was easy when I was 30,
Yes.
but I'm almost 60, for God's sakes, right? And I'm still doing this stuff every day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, right?
Yeah.
So I was running for a while. Now I'm biking, whatever the thing is. Sometimes just at home now, right? So I have to keep going, but the privacy and, in fact, easier system, just relying on yourself, that was the decision. So mutual understanding, I would say, right, Ken? And you have much more, I think, patience with me too. He has to learn that too.
Well, we're married 22 years now.
That's right.
So I think it's safe to say we can unpack our boxes and decide we're in a great place, as we are, not only in our relationship, but now in a wonderful ranch house. And our 3 children are now juniors at 3 separate colleges in upstate New York.
Yeah. So it somehow works, but maybe we're just lucky. It doesn't work for everybody. It's not everybody who has a wife, able person like me, 6 feet 1 inch tall, so he can actually, somehow transfer a husband from bed to the wheelchair and back without any lifts and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Not everybody is as lucky. So we understand, and that's why sometimes, let's say government would be nice to have some kind of role here to maybe, support financially the system with aids included. So there are different setups, right? So
I think that's something we feel very passionate about, to give people a break. And my wife, it would be 25 years, and then we dated for 3. So 27 years in that role as full-time caregiver up until her 2 cancer surgeries, and was unable to continue, but still very much part of my care routine. But now I have professional caregivers that come in 4 or 5 days a week, just in the mornings for a couple hours to alleviate. And you're right, we were very independent and strong up until the point where, like you say, the body breaks down or becomes too heavy, and then you pivot from there. So I think everyone has, I don't think there's one size fits all, right? I think for every couple, it will be something that they'll figure out what suits best for their relationship and their marriage and what have you. And you guys have been a remarkable role model in that way. And to have 3 triplets, right? If I'm not mistaken, I haven't quite. I mean, I got to that part of the book, but I was so infatuated with some of the other sections that I didn't. There was not a lot of detail, but paid attention to. But how did 3 boys? I mean, how did you take the news of that first as a father, Ken, and then after that, Anna, go 3 boys, and now 1 more, my husband, 4. What was that news like, and how did that play out in your lives?
It was incredible. When we first talked about getting married, Anna said that she wanted to have my baby. Mm-hmm. And not just a baby, my baby.
Yes.
She said she wanted to see a little Kunken running around our home.
Yes.
Now, at this time, I had been paralyzed for more than 30 years, and I was already in my 50s, so it really sounded impossible. But we looked into various options and found that it still may be possible through in vitro fertilization.
Yes.
So we pursued it, and through miracle of miracles, Anna became pregnant. And I tried to go with her for every sonogram. And I remember on that first sonogram, I was right next to her when you saw on the screen not just one or two, but three little embryos developing. And we were shocked. And we looked at each other incredulous and couldn't believe how fortunate we were. But it was a difficult decision to decide how we're going to proceed through that pregnancy. One of the doctors was meeting with us and telling us all the possibilities for something to go wrong, and suggested that we may want to reduce, that there was a way of doing it where we wouldn't have triplets. And Anna and I looked at each other, and when we were left alone, we spoke. And, I told Anna that I really felt it should be her decision because it was her body that was severely at risk to carry triplets back then. And I wanted the decision to be hers without having to worry about the financial aspects of having triplets. And without hesitation, Anna said she was big, strong, and wanted to have all three. We never talked about it again. And we're very proud parents of triplet sons, Joey, Jimmy, and Timmy, all healthy, all extremely bright, very active, and doing great at 3 separate colleges right now.
You stole my next line. Joey, Jimmy, and Timmy. But yes, Joseph, James, and Timothy Kunken. And if you look online, there's a great YouTube article. I think that, or no, it was in the court. What is it? How does the Cornell University, their media paper? Is it the Cornelian or the?
Well, they have the Cornell Daily Sun was the newspaper, but the Cornell Alumni Magazine.
That's what it was.
Very nice story on our family that featured a lot of pictures of the kids, and it's great that one of our children, Joey, is currently a junior at Cornell now. So 50 years after my injury, or 50 years actually after I graduated from Cornell, Joey began as a freshman there.
Amazing. Yeah. Ken, can we talk just briefly about fatherhood? And how did you adapt to fatherhood? Because at that time, there was the so-called cliche role of a father, right? The physical one, playing ball with the boys, that one, discipline, the whole bit. How did fatherhood change for, maybe not change, but how did you adjust to a role of the world defined what a father would look like in that day and age, and how you played that role out with your boys?
Okay. Before our children were born, I really questioned whether I would be able to be a good father to my children. And, I know my father, when I was injured, was not able to physically care for me, but obviously he always provided the financial resources that I needed. And, I tried to adjust to the fact that I would be responsible for providing them because I was working, with the financial resources. But the physical care would totally be up to Anna, my wife. Now, I was skeptical about becoming a father, but Anna kept reassuring me that I was a very good uncle. I have a brother and a sister, all with children, and I love being the uncle to their kids. And Anna loved the way that I dealt with my nephews and my nieces, and she kept reassuring me that she felt I'd be a good father. And as soon as our boys were born, I couldn't have been more happy, more proud, and loving the opportunity to help raise them and be their father. And they bring a smile to my face every time I even think about them.
So I was right?
You were absolutely right.
Thank you.
One for you.
And we have that on the record.
Right.
Can I want to jump back a little bit, if I may. I don't want to take much more of your time. Can we talk briefly about your role as a prosecutor? You've got your education and your degrees and things, and how did your role of becoming a state prosecutor develop, and what were some of the steps that were put in place in order for you to succeed in that area vocationally as well?
Well, I worked for a few years as a vocational rehabilitation counselor at the Viscardi Center, and I loved that job. One of my responsibilities was to speak at conferences before groups and organizations concerning affirmative action and non-discrimination for people with disabilities. And after my talks, I would often be asked questions. And while I would do my best to respond appropriately, I was always very careful to caution the questioners they should really consult with a lawyer about their concerns. And I guess it didn't take long before I started to think, there's no reason why I couldn't become that lawyer. And I had an older brother named Stephen, who was a lawyer, and he was working as a defense attorney. He was working as a public defender at the time. So when I went to law school, Steve suggested that I do an internship at the Nassau County District Attorney's Office because, they were more set up to accommodate somebody in a wheelchair because their office was in the same building as the courthouse. And they had a lot of student interns, paralegals, police and detectives ready to assist, when you were working there along with other support staff. So I did an internship there at the summer after my second year of law school and absolutely loved it and decided to apply for a full-time job there. And I was really skeptical after I had such a difficult time getting my first job as a rehab counselor to now apply to be a prosecutor. But I was fortunate that the district attorney at the time, a person by the name of Dennis Dillon, placed his hiring decision on my abilities rather than my disability. And at the time, I didn't know of any other quadriplegics who were trial attorneys, let alone assistant district attorneys. But I thought it took a lot of guts on his part and on the other staff in his office to give me the opportunity to show what I could do. So they offered me the position. Now, let me tell you a little bit more. Here I went through 3 years of law school. I passed a very difficult New York State bar exam the first time that I took it. I began my work with a very intensive 4-week training program to teach us all aspects of trial advocacy from a prosecutor's perspective. And I'm so excited to go to court my first day, and I couldn't fit through the swinging doorways in the courtroom. They were too narrow to let me to get through in my electric wheelchair. That's how I began my work.
Wow.
Finally, they widened every doorway that I needed in all the courtrooms so that I could proceed as a prosecutor.
One of the little known legacies, right? There's so many big changes that you've affected in that, but the widening of the swinging panels so that you can get a wheelchair through. Yeah, amazing.
I'd add too that on my first day of work, the elevator was broken and I had to be carried up the steps as well.
Yeah. Reminds me, just so uncanny, some of the things that you and I have in common, just at so many years difference. I'd love to talk about at another time, or interview 2.0. Just before I let you go, though, Senator Kennedy quoted you and your story in his healthcare work. And what did it feel like to you now to see your personal struggle influence national policy? I mean, what a great testimony to a legacy.
Thank you. Well, what happened was My father was an insurance salesman. He sold life insurance.
Mm.
And the coverage when I was injured in 1970 was certainly not adequate for anybody experiencing such a life-altering, life-changing injury such as you and I have had.
Yeah.
And at the time, Senator Kennedy was going around the country, with his Senate Health Subcommittee, trying to find testimony of people's problems dealing with the healthcare industry. So when he heard about my injury and the fact that my father sold insurance and would be saying that there was no policy out there that would have been sufficient to coverage an injury such as mine, he thought that that was testimony his subcommittee needed to hear. So he invited both my father and I to testify, and that testimony received national publicity. And I'm happy to say that it wasn't just our testimony, but others as well, that eventually took quite a while, but eventually laid changes in our healthcare system. And insurance coverage has gotten much better since then.
You're definitely a major cog in that wheel, which I think later, I know it came later, but I think that's still a cog in the wheel that you turned over, leading to the ADA Act that came even years later. I believe your work was definitely a stepping stone to getting us where what Bush signed a bit later. So I do credit you for that as well. Before I let you go, I want to talk about the book. Anna, how did you get Ken? Now let's think this all the way through, perspective wise. How did you get Ken to put his thoughts down on paper, and then not just in written? You sent me an audiobook form, and what surprised me most about the audiobook was it wasn't some hired step-in reader. You actually have the voice of Ken reading his own memoir. Tell us what that looked like getting the book out, because I can't say enough about it, folks. You've got to get your hands on a copy of I Dream of Things That Never Were, the Kenneth Kunken story. It is something, even if that you don't have a disability, the themes in it, the stick-to-itiveness, the drive, what he had to deal with from a medical perspective, all things that are fascinating, and we'll tell you where you can get your hands on it at the end. But Anna, let's talk a little bit about the book, and how did I get an audio copy of that man reading it?
Well, it was all AI,
Of course. How do you find an AI bot that sounds with that accent?
No, it definitely wasn't.
So what happened is, years happened, years before we actually had the book on paper, right? You started to really look into that book, let's say writing this after we had children, because Ken decided, okay, I have triplets. There is something to write about. Okay, he didn't think about his life as something to be, interesting enough to share, especially in the book form. Although he already had this written, a lot of it. That's why there's so much, it contains so much details. He was writing this since 1971. He can tell you that too.
Okay.
But we had to first. So what we did first, or actually I did first. So we had this big binder with lots of pages of typewritten material. So first I scanned everything into the computer. I went through it, corrected some mistakes, then put everything in some kind of readable chapters. Then I, of course, have Ken go through it with me. We had usually two screens, one big for Ken and me on my laptop, right? So I was mirroring everything, right? So he was telling me what to change, what to write, and things like that. Many times when we were just doing our morning or evening routine, or going to or from work, when we were alone, had some few minutes to talk, we were pretty much brainwash, turning our brains, around the topics and discussing this or that story. So there is a story, something happened, but I thought, for example, you have to kind of explore it, right? You have to explain something, how that story or what happened to you impacted you thinking about your life and everything around it. So I asked Ken to go deep into those things, right? So, and then, after of this, can go to a work, of course, he came back, maybe in the evening after boys are already sleeping, we had half hour, we are not already falling asleep ourselves because we're so tired, right? On the end of the day, we would sit there and maybe drafted something that was said in between us, let's say in the morning or in the car on the way from work, right? So inches by inches took us years, right? Until Ken retired or semi-retired, 2016, right? So then we had more time to actually work on it. But there was a time when we were trying to put some more stuff on the paper or into the file in the computer, but I was just too busy. I had no time whatsoever to sit in front of this computer, okay?
Yes.
I had boys, of course, Ken going back and forth to work. I had shopping, cleaning, cooking, and everything in between. Okay. And of course, I was just tired. So at this point, actually, we decided to maybe try to utilize Dragon, naturally speaking,
Yes.
which Ken had at work, but didn't really work with it. He thought that it's not really accurate.
Mhm.
So I set up Ken with his set here at home. And I remember you would just keep talking about you growing up and something that was missing. And I wasn't kind of like living side by side with him. Okay. I could help to say something or maybe contribute to the story when the boys were already here or when I show up, right? But nothing. I had no idea what he was doing, let's say, for those years in the DA's office. So Ken was dictating all that stuff, like a stream on text was showing up on this screen when he was talking, which was complicated anyway. But we still had to go through this line by line and edit this stuff. That takes a lot of time, especially when you have very imperfect software to work with.
Yeah.
Talking about 20 over, almost 20 years ago, right?
Well, let me backtrack a little bit. When I was first in the hospital, in the rehab facility, a friend of my Aunt Lorraine's by the name of Albert Megalin had actually suggested that I write a book.
Yes.
And he said he would help me with it. And he would come to the rehab facility one day a week and just ask me what happened today or tell me about, your life, your injury. And I would just talk and he would try and write it down in a modified shorthand. And then the next week he would type it up and come back and tell me what he wrote. A lot of it didn't make sense because his modified shorthand didn't capture everything. And of course, I didn't know how to write a book or to dictate. But then I left for school and we tried to meet when I came home on weekends. And, for a couple of years, we'd start, stop. And then we just stopped. And then I got to the point where I actually tried typing a little bit myself with one arm with special splints. I could type really, really slowly. On a good day, I could get up to 12 words a minute.
I'm sorry, that was a typewriter. That wasn't a computer.
A electric typewriter. Yeah. This was before laptop computers. Yeah. And I couldn't keep that up for more than a few minutes before my arm would tire. Mm-hmm. So I just left the book for years and years and years. And I had people over the years, when I was working as an assistant district attorney, suggest that I should, do motivational speaking and perhaps write a book. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I didn't think I had done anything special. I mean, yes, I went back to school and yes, I had a good job, but I just didn't feel like it was anything special. And then when our boys were born, I remember looking at them, triplets are always born prematurely. So they're kept in what they call the NICU, neonatal intensive care unit, for a while. And I remember sitting by their 3 little incubators and looking at them. And it was like, whoa, this is big. This is a story that needs to be told. And Anna said she would help me write it.
But I have
And
no time. I'm sorry.
so with the little time we had, eventually we would sit by the kitchen table and Anna would sit to my right with her laptop computer and I would try and dictate, the events of my life. And, I never considered myself much of a writer. My undergraduate degree was in engineering. We were known for being good with math and not so good with English. So for me, it was very strange to even think about writing a book. So, I would try and dictate to Anna and I'd say, all right, on this day I went to the store. And she'd say, no, you can't just say that. What do you mean you went to the store? Why did you go to the store? How did you get to the store? What did you do at the store? What were you thinking when you went to, and kept trying to pull more out of me.
I'm sorry. Just
She
to
did
interrupt.
an amazing job.
Talking about a person who cannot use his arms going to the store to do shopping. Okay.
Yeah.
Just imagine that. Okay.
Hmm.
So you cannot just say you went to the store. There
Yeah.
is the store around it. It's not just regular person going. Okay.
Mhm.
Even for you, when was the last time you went to the store?
Mm-mm.
See, it's not practical for you. And he did go to the store, usually to look, let's say, for cards for me, for, I don't know, anniversary or whatever. So,
So,
just
but,
saying.
throughout the time we were writing the book or, just getting up in the morning or doing something else during the day, something would pop in my head and I would mention it to Anna and she'd say, you never told me about that. You ought to write about that, and so it took quite a while. It took us years to actually finish the book. In fact, we actually finished it 2 years ago, I guess. So, I started working on the book 50 years earlier and we finished it 2 years ago. And, it's out in the hardcover and a Kindle version, but Anna encouraged me to do an audiobook as well. And I thought, well, we should find a professional narrator, somebody to actually speak. And Anna kept insisting, no, I should be the one to tell my story. And Anna suggested that my son Timothy actually do the recording. So we have a big walk-in closet in our home that we set up as like a recording studio. We put blankets and things around the walls and the door to make it quieter. And we had a big microphone for Timmy and, one for me, I guess, on Anna's
Just
computer.
one for you.
Right. And we'd go in this closet and just continuously, I would read the book and Timmy would do the recording. And we actually did it 3 separate times, meaning the book is just under 16 hours.
Yeah.
But we recorded it 3 times. So it was a lengthy time in that closet doing the recording. But I'm
It
so
turned
glad.
out amazing. It did. Not just the content and how you describe and good for you, Anna, teaching him how to pull more meaning out of a sentence. It's been one of my most enjoyable reads in years. Maybe I'm a little biased because there's so much I could picture in it, but also, I mean, to get a letter from Nixon in there and Eisenhower, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I didn't get one. I didn't get one from Eisenhower.
Sorry,
We got it
You did get one, right?
from Eisenhower, not from
who
Eisenhower.
was
I
FBI?
got one from not only Nixon and Kennedy, but from J. Edgar Hoover,
That's the FBI.
FBI, which
Right.
really surprised me.
Yes,
So yes,
that was the one. I couldn't remember who it was there, but you're right, the Hoover letter. So I mean, a remarkable book, a remarkable couple, a remarkable story, and so down to earth and giving of their time. I had you over for an hour. I want to close out with this. Can you finish these sentences? I have 3 for you, Ken, and 1 for you, Anna. Ken, the biggest misconception people have about disability is
disability does not mean inability. Somebody with a disability may be limited in one aspect of their life, perhaps physically, perhaps intellectually. It doesn't mean they don't have unlimited ability in other areas. And
Love
I people need to recognize disability does not mean inability.
I'm going to quote that. That's really good. Disability does not mean inability. Yeah. Both of you. This can be for both of you. What I'm most grateful for today is
Just start aligning for us that we end up in this very moment together after so many years being married, but just the fact that we met, right? The fact that he can survive his accidents, then somehow became a professional, needing somebody like me to help him. And when you think about the people going, let's say, through IVF, right, fertility treatment, we got lucky enough to be pregnant for the first try. Nothing happened, not much complication. We end up with three beautiful boys, healthy, so instant family, okay? And we're still here. We still here,
Well,
right? You're not supposed to be here, by the way.
I am
And we're
most
still here
grateful
unhappy.
for my incredible
So-
wife who's sitting next to me and my three wonderful, wonderful, wonderful children who are doing so well in their lives and so well in school. And I might add, all three are martial artists. All three are second-degree black belts in Taekwondo. So they're very active.
that's one way to stretch your father, isn't it? That's one way to keep your mobility in your lower limbs.
That's right.
Yeah, we have our own bodyguards when they're around, of course.
Yes. Anna has taught me that, this is for Ken. Anna has taught me that
Anna has taught me that there's still a lot of love in my life, whether it be for Anna, my children, other relatives, just enjoying things around me, that I still have a life worth living, and it's made all the difference.
Anna, Ken has taught me that
There is no limitation. It all depends what you want to do, and you can do it. I mean, I have to tell you how many times Ken sometimes would make some kind of decision that would be crazy from many people's perspective, but somehow he will make it work, right? So this is just, or actually, the best way to make him fly, I would say, is to tell him that something is not possible. Okay, so kind of like go against. But when we work together as a team, I would say there is really no limitations. So I would not say anybody something is not possible. It is probably.
And
this way or another, it is.
I might just add that that's one of the reasons why I like the title of my book. I dream of things that never were, because that's how I've tried to live my life.
It's an amazing way to live. Lastly, for both of you, if our story could just inspire one person, I'd want them to know.
Never give up. There's still a lot you can do in your life to not only help yourself, but to help others. And that's what made me feel the best, is getting up each day thinking I was making a difference in other people's lives.
Anna, if our story could inspire just one person, I'd want them to know.
When somebody goes through accident like you and Ken did, right? That changed your life completely. But even if you're born with disability, some kind of, doesn't mean that you don't have love to give, that you have desires, you have wants. You are the same like everybody else around you. Doesn't limit you. That especially when you think about what you want to be doing and what you want to be, let's say, being loved or not, right? So this is still human being. You have to see human being in everybody, which also kind of like gets me to all the wars around us everywhere, Ukraine, Gaza. Looks like that the both sides don't really see human beings on the other side, right?
People.
They don't really treat themselves or each other like somebody equal. And that the same thing you can transfer to able-bodied people and people with disabilities. They seems to think, the able-bodied people who don't have experience with people with disabilities, that this is some other creature. No, they are exactly like you, exactly the same human being with the same wants, needs, and love to give.
Close with this. Disability does not mean inability, folks. Anna and Kenneth Kunken, you've got to get your hands on their book, I Dream of Things That Never Were. Thank you for joining me on the SwagAbility Show today. It has been an honor for me to have you, and I hope this is just the first of many. There may be a 2.0 down the road, but it's been an absolute joy. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you as well, and we've enjoyed it as well.
Yes. Thank you.
If you're new to the SwagAbility Show, if this is your first time listening to one of our podcasts, you could do my wife and I the greatest honor. As you subscribe to the SwagAbility Show, hit the like, and you could do us the greatest honor by sharing it with your contacts so that we can get our name out. And where can we get a copy? Where can folks get a copy of your book, Things That Never Were?
They can go on my website, kenkunken.com, and that gives a description of where they can buy not only the audio book, but the ebook version, the Kindle, as well as the audio book.
And hard copy.
And the hard copy. So that would help them out too. And it's certainly on Amazon as well as some other sites that they can go to.
Spell it for us, Ken. You just so we make sure we've got the spelling right of your website.
It's Ken Kunken, my name, KenKunken at kenkunken.com.
Right. Perfect. All right, friends, stay safe, stay healthy, and until next time, thrive where life finds you. Swags out.